Hello, welcome back to Mike Reads the World. Tonight we're going to look at some Polynesian folktales. Hello, welcome back to Mike Reads the World. Today I'm going to be discussing country number 88, which isn't even a country, it's a region. Polynesia, with some folktales from two different books that are going to cover Hawaii, New Zealand, Tahiti, Samoa, and Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, as is the proper native name. So the way I'm doing this is a project to read a book from an author from every country in the world. And while I'm never very picky about the author as far as, they can be born in the country, have lived there, or just have compiled a bunch of different mythology or folk tales, whatever. But yeah, I'm going to do one video, or consider each of the Nijas as one country for this project. So instead of finding a book from every Pacific island that may be, hard to find, or not something I'm necessarily interested in reading, or get very repetitive because there's so many independent island nations, I've thought it's fair to kind of compress this into Polynesia, Micronesia, Melanesia, and Indonesia. All the Nesias get their own video, basically, and Indonesia is actually its own country as a whole, anyway. So, but that's how we're doing this. So, without any more preamble, let's actually talk about this. Oh, and I just wanted to mention the countries actually that I guess are part of Polynesia are Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, Samoa, and New Zealand, which we've already covered. But there are a good number of, and of course Hawaii. Can't forget Hawaii, of course, but that's part of the United States, and Easter Island being part of Chile. So there are a number of New Zealand folktales in here. But we open with kind of a bizarre one from Tahiti, and as you can see, this is from the Chronicle book series, where you can find these at most major bookstores in the United States, at least, where, they have Tales of East Africa, Tales of Japan, and we're doing Tales of Polynesia, but they're all illustrated by a different artist, and they have very unique and interesting illustrations, like this first one, The Legend of Pai Otu, which is basically about a heron that goes inside of and eats the intestines of a larger heron that is bullying all the other herons. So it's basically a David and Goliath story. And I apologize, I'm going to be comparing all of these stories to my own, the mythology that I grew up with, because that's just my point of comparison. And some of the hardest ones to get into are the ones that I didn't have a point of comparison. And there were a few that were just really hard to get my mind around, so I probably won't talk about those as much. But then from New Zealand, I should also mention these are separated, these 11 stories are separated into 4 categories. So we get tricksters, creatures of earth and sea, life and death, and family. And I'm sorry, it's actually 15 stories in 4 sections. So we start with the tricksters, which is that heron. And then we also get some fairies who teach the art of fishing in New Zealand. We get a battle between 2 sorcerers in New Zealand, where one sorcerer from a tribe hears about another very powerful one from another tribe, goes and uses some underhanded tactics to bring him down. In my opinion, underhanded, but I guess all's fair in love and war, right? And this causes a long feud between these 2 tribes that the end of the tale kind of leads us to believe continues to this day. And so that about does it for the tricksters. Then we go into probably my favorite section of the book, where we get some stories of anthropomorphism and half man, half creature, and creatures turning into people and people turning into creatures of earth and sea. The first one being of a battle between the fish tribes and men. where the fish tribes actually win and gain their particular forms by looting the spoils of war from the men. So the ones that put a barb on their head, well, that's how they got a barb, and that's how we got different types of fish. But this is probably the only one from Hawaii that I'm going to talk about today, because I might do more. There's some of the Hawaii has some of the longest stories in this book, and there's a couple of them that I might talk about for when I do a Reading the States. I'm also trying to eventually read a book from representing every state in the United States, so this book will serve to give me some stories for that. But we'll see. This is definitely the best one. The shark, for me, the Shark Man Nanaue, is basically a Frankenstein story where this boy is born half man, half shark. His father tries to hide it his whole life, but when his tribe discovers it, he becomes an outcast. They kick him off the island. And then he goes to another island where his shark instincts start to come out, like he tries to eat somebody, and then they kick him out to another island, and he does the same thing, and so he is eventually killed and burned by the people of that final island, and it's a tragic story where it's that sympathetic monster type of archetype, I suppose. The story of Pili and Sina in this section is also very good about and Fiji actually makes an appearance in this story, where a princess from Samoa is married off to the chieftain of Fiji, and her brother, who is who can change into a tiny lizard, is going with her in like a satchel or something, and when they hit misfortune on their way back to Fiji, they blame it on her and think she's a witch. So the lizard tells her, like, where is food located, or where's the nearest island, and she's able to tell them because of her lizard brother and telling her where this stuff is. So she tells it, and then they think she's a witch because she brings them good fortune. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But it all works out in the end in a happy ending, at least for her, because the king of Fiji ends up discarding his Fijian wife and preferring the Samoan wife. So yeah, at least a happy ending for her, I suppose. And then we go to Tahiti again, where we get this bizarre story of a man who wishes to be beautiful, goes to a magical woman who can, change him, and she makes him beautiful, but turns him into a shrimp, I guess, or a lot of shrimp. It's a pretty bizarre story from Tahiti. And then we get into the life and death section. There's a couple of really long stories in here from Hawaii that I wanna save. Those were two that I had a hard time wrapping my head around as well. So, but this one from Tahiti here, the origin of the name Panauia, this was a really great one. And I wanted to point this one out. It's very short, but it's basically a princess has a lover who is not royal, and so this man is killed so that she can marry the person she's supposed to. But then we get to the point where she's so depressed that she, runs away from the village, and then her brother goes to find her, throwing herself down into a pit, which is basically a hole to the underworld, and they both go down there, and this just reminded me of, like, in Greek and Roman mythology, the journeys to Hades and back. So they spend a year in the underworld, which is described as there were immense ocean conch shells from which the spirits drew harmonious sounds. Even now on calm nights, when the fishermen of Panauia pass close to the great fissure in the reef called the Toada Miro, they sometimes hear the music of the spirits. So it's a very short description. We don't get any great adventure in the underworld. We just know that they spent a year there and came back. The world of the spirits. Maybe not specifically an underworld, but the world of the spirits. And so continue on here. And the final section, family, we get a classic king kills all the male children so that none of them can usurp him, but one slips through the cracks. And then when the king realizes that this boy slipped through the cracks, he gives them all these dangerous missions to try to get him killed, but the boy manages to pass all the trials and conquer and gets the girl in the end. So it's basically Jason and the Golden Fleece meets Hercules, or just Jason and the Golden Fleece, right? That's basically the story. It's, Tigalaw makes a law that all male children have to be killed and all female children should live. The reason is that he's afraid a boy will be born that's better looking than him. And this boy, Seiya, he's discovered. He gets sent to go fight a cannibal to get some fruit off a tree that no one can get. He gets sent to, do all this crazy stuff. So that's a fun one. That's a fun one, and definitely one I could relate to, archetypes, pre-existing archetypes. So the story of the Earth, also pretty interesting. The sun in the sky is in love with a girl, and she's there with her sister, and this was a strange one. I can't really remember why I liked it. For some reason, this one slipped through the cracks of my mind, but has a very nice picture there attached to it. It's the story of the Earth, so I imagine something with the sun and this woman that the sun loves is something about the birth of the island and how the island of which one is this? Samoa became beautiful. So I forget if I'm mentioning even what islands these are all from, but I think that'll do it for this one. All of these were collected kind of, you have these notes on the sources, so this wasn't collected really by any one person. It's just pulled from a lot of different sources that were mostly gathered in the early 20th century. So, and I believe these are slight retellings. I don't know. They might just be taken directly from the source material. So it's that's where the dates of the video come from, is from the original sources. And then we also get how seabirds arrived to Rapa Nui that I wanted to share. Now this I got at Easter Island, and this one as well. Easter Island, Earth Island, which is a very academic type of book, but it has a really interesting thesis about how Easter Island is kind of a microcosm of the entire Earth, and even without looking at the European involvement, there were revolutions, ecological destruction, and issues that they had to deal with, and adaptations. And this is really the most isolated, how do I put it? The most isolated place on Earth with continuous habitation for, continuously inhabited for such a long time, if that makes sense. Like, it's impressive. It's just hard to say nicely, I guess. I haven't thought about it, but looking at how such a small group of people lived in isolation for so long, and even that isolation is a little bit questionable. I mean, there's some speculation about, did the Polynesians get to South America, or did South Americans get to Polynesia? The first one is more likely from the little I've read of this book, but I really think I need to finish reading this book more in detail, and then probably do a separate video about it. For today, I'm just going to talk about this nice little book of, it's basically a children's book, and it's one sort of folktale, but it's beautifully illustrated and has very iconic places on the island. It hits most of the most iconic places on the island, and tells the story not only of how the seabirds arrived to the island in mythological terms, but how the whole competition of the birdman, or the hombre pájaro, where there was a big competition every year, and this was after the Moais, after the big tall statues were all toppled and basically ignored for a century or more. I think it was that long, and they had this competition every year where they would have to swim out to the small island that's next to Easter Island to capture an egg from the bird. Oh, what's the bird called? Ooh, they got me. See, this is what, and at the end of the book they have all these like exercises, like I think they use this in school there or something like that, you know. See, I should have done those, then maybe I could remember what the name of the bird is. Manutara, I want to say it is. Anyway, yeah, the competition was to see who could get the egg first, and then, you know, return up the steep cliffs, which was very dangerous, climbing up the steep cliffs back to the village at the top of the cliffs, and then that man would be the chieftain basically for the next year until they did the competition again. So it was kind of, you know, the strongest and fastest man just became the chieftain, but it was a very good adaptation strategy to kind of, I suppose this book kind of explains it better, so I should probably read that and before I try talking about it. But this book explains kind of how that competition began as well, and there's the winner being crowned, I suppose. I almost could have just read this whole book. I don't know. It's just very nice little drawings. I don't know if this is difficult to find. If you're interested in it, I didn't actually look online to see if it was, you know, available, but it's bilingual. If you didn't notice that, it's in English up here and Rapa Nui language on the bottom. So it's actually got the native language on the bottom. So that's very cool too. Yeah, I think that will do it for today's video about folktales from Polynesia and Easter Island. I hope to talk a lot more about Easter Island, but I feel like, yeah, that has to be a separate video. So this kind of covers Polynesia, not the most in depth. I realize that, but not all of these will be. This isn't a geography channel. It's not a history channel. It's just a channel where I read books from different countries, and that's literally all it is. So thank you for watching, and you know, and me talking about them, I guess. So thank you for watching, and have a great day or evening, and we'll see you next time on Mike Reads the World.